welcome to today's video, guys. In today's video we're going to be doing a budget friendly 12 volt system in my Grand Vitara. So as you can see, a lot of this stuff is King's, and that's okay because King's is cheap and the quality is half decent. So for the fridge we've gone with the new King's 45 litre. This one's a dual climate control, I suppose. It can be a fridge or freezer. Yeah, it's pretty good. I've used this a few times already and it seems to do the job. And for the solar panel, we've gone with a 200 watt foldable King solar panel. Now this kit came with an MPPT charger, but I didn't like that charger, so we're getting rid of that. The battery, that's going to be King's, what is it? I think it's 115 amp hour AGM. I've used this, cycled it a few times as well, and it seems pretty good. For our battery charger when it's in the car, and also happens to be solar charger, is we've gone for a Atom Power 20 amp DC to DC charger. Now the plan is with that is it should fit on top of the battery box, so when I remove the battery out of my car at camp or whatever else, I can just plug the solar panel straight in and it'll work pretty seamlessly. And then for the battery box, we've gone for a PowerTech battery box. This is because it's comes fitted with a voltmeter on top and some Siggy plugs and stuff on the side. But the main thing is this raised section here, the DC to DC charger should just sit in flush with the top of the battery box, so that's the plan. But yeah, first of all we're just going to crack into this battery box and start mounting the DC to DC charger and fitting some Anderson plugs off on the side of it. Right, so first things first, we'll need to mount the DC to DC charger on top of the battery box, so we're just going to remove that handle and see how we go. Alright, so got the DC to DC charger mounted on top, and I've got all of the cables running into the box. So now what we've basically got to do is put an Anderson plug, probably, I'm thinking I'll put one there and there, and then that'll be for DC input from, say, the car's alternator, and then solar input, or vice versa, whichever way we put them. But yeah, I'll drill those holes and mount those Anderson plugs now. We've got the two Anderson plugs up mounted, so we've got the solar one there and the DC input from the car there. This little strap that holds the lid on the battery box, I didn't really think about it when I mounted this how I did, so I just had to cut some holes in the lid and run it through that way. As far as the wiring goes, this has all been really simple so far. I haven't really done anything other than put the positives and negatives in the right spot on the Anderson plug. The battery input from the DC to DC charger comes in here onto these two little terminals, which then run on these really thick gauge wire that'll connect up to the battery. And then basically this thing should charge the battery properly. All we've got left to do with this battery box is probably throw some Anderson plugs on this side somewhere for accessories like a fridge and whatever else. Wow, the two Anderson plugs are now on. So I'll just run you through all this wiring if you'd like to copy it for your own setup or whatever. But here we've got our red and green wires, which are for your DC input from your car, so basically just what comes off of your battery. Then your blue and brown wires, that's for your solar input, and both of those just run out to some Anderson plugs, as you saw before. Then your black and yellow, black's your negative for your battery and yellow is your positive for the battery, so that is the input from the charger to the battery to charge it. the orange, we've now put a 30 amp fuse on it, just to be, well, it's good to be safe than sorry. And then this little blue wire here, that just runs out onto here, is a ignition switch wire. So you run that onto something that gets power when you put your ignition on, and that way the charger will only be on and sucking power from the battery when your ignition's on. So that stops you from accidentally draining your battery or anything like that when you don't mean to. However, if you don't run that, the charger does sense the voltage of your starting battery, and it kind of cuts out charging at like 12.8 volts or something, so it's fairly safe to run without that ignition wire. Yet to decide if I'm going to do that or not. And then for our two Anderson plugs on the side here, I've just got the positives running back to the main positive terminal that gets its power from the battery through this wire. But I've got them running through some, I think I put 30 amp fuses in there, just in, you know, better to be safe than sorry. These should withstand, well, I'm only running a fridge and probably lights off of them, so I only draw not even 10 amps, but fused, and the negatives just run back to the negative there. So that's basically the wiring for this battery box. So that is the battery box done. Car input, solar input, DC to DC charger, two Anderson plugs fused with 30 amps, and we've got some cigarette lighters and stuff like that on that side. Little switch there for the voltmeter and to turn these on. But yeah, that box setup seems pretty good. Next thing to do is wire up the car, run some 10mm cable down to the back for the charger. So just to test the chargers working properly, got the solar panel out in the sun, an extension lead run here. We plug that into our solar, it'll light up. I've already set it to AGM/gel for this, and it'll say power on, charging lights on, and it's saying it's solar charging. And if I flick this light on for our voltmeter, it says we're charging at 14.4 volts. So that's working pretty good. Alright, so power cable runs along the firewall there, drops down, goes through this grommet that then comes through, runs down there. I've still got the sort of kick guard thing off, but runs down along there, all the way through, up into the boot to this Anderson plug. And for the negative for this, I just grabbed it off one of the bolts that holds the seat down, because obviously the body is negatively earthed. So if you guys have a 4-door SQ Vitara, or Grand Vitara I should say, you can fit the new King's 45 litre fridge into the back of it if you remove the handles off both sides. It fits in nicely. You've got to have that back seat straight up and down, so you obviously limit your seating capacity back to 3 instead of 5 people, but it fits in and the door shuts. Now you are blocking off these vents, so I'm not saying that it's a good thing or a bad thing. I've used the fridge in the car like this quite a few times now with those vents all blocked off, and it doesn't seem to cause any problems. But eventually, when I build some shelves and everything for the back here, I'm going to cut a section of this door out and put some mesh in it so the fridge can breathe into that door space. But yeah, as we can see, fridge is working, battery voltage is at 12.8 with that fridge going on, and DC to DC charger is off. I'll go and flick the car on so you guys can see what happens when this powers up. So the car is currently off and the battery voltage is at 12.9. no lights on the DC to DC charger. At the moment I don't think I'm going to wire in the ignition switch because I'm not keeping this in my car. I'll only have it in the car when I want to be using the dual battery setup and everything, so I shouldn't have any issues. But I'll go turn the car on now and we can watch this, what the display does. So with the car turned on, we can see it says power on and says that it's charging and that we're running a AGM battery. And as the car's starter battery and alternator starts to work more, this voltage will increase. So we're currently sitting at 12 point, well, we're going up, we're climbing to, what are we on now, 14.6. So this battery has stage charge, or this DC to DC charger has stage charging, so it'll sort of charge between 14.6, 14.7 volts, and then when it gets charged it'll sit at a float charge of around 13.5, I believe. So we can see it's all operating and working correctly. Now that I've turned the car off, the battery is still being charged, and at the moment my main battery, I can see it's at 12.8 volts and it's currently just slowly dropping. And when it gets down to probably 12.5-ish, the charger will turn off. So we just dropped down to 12.5 volts, and as you can see, the battery charger is turned off and the AGM charge battery is slowly dropping off as the fridge is drawing it. So as we can see, it's all working properly and all well. Alright guys, so that wraps up the video for today. Today I've shown you how to wire in a DC to DC charger and all of that. Now, I'm not saying that how I've done it is right or how you should do it. This is just what I've done. Obviously, read your wiring diagrams and all that sort of information. Don't just blindly follow what I've said because it may be wrong. I believe it's alright and it seems to be working for me. But yeah, just make sure you do your own research and follow the wiring diagram that comes with whatever DC to DC charger that you pick. I haven't opted in to use the ignition wire just yet, but eventually I'll wire that in. But I think I'll just see how this setup goes for now before I worry about doing anything. If you guys want to follow what I've done, I'll leave the links to everything that I bought in the description of this video so you can follow along and have a very similar setup. I'm quite happy with how this fridge and dual battery system works together. I have actually, since doing it, used it for a day. I took it down to double island and everything, and this charger seemed to work pretty well. And yeah, so that's going to be all for today guys. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, I just noticed too that we've run over 300 subscribers now, so that is absolutely awesome. Thanks so much guys, and see you next time.